Happy Monday! Welcome back to Drinking by My Shelf. My name is Emma and this is a list of books that I loved but never want to read again. I researched for this video because I was thinking about doing one of those books that I read before booktube videos. So I went through like my entire history on Goodreads. I didn't have Goodreads for that long, but I did used to keep a book diary from when I was quite young, and then I, at one time when I was really bored a few years ago, uploaded all of that to Goodreads. So I've got a lot of info about the books that I've read since I was a kid. So I went through my whole Goodreads history and found a ton of the books that I had absolutely adored but never talked about on booktube because I read them so long ago. And I realised that list split pretty neatly into books that I was really interested in rereading again today, and that is a video that will come soon, and books that I have absolutely no intention of picking up ever again. That some of them because I've just moved on, some of them because they actually sound god awful, but these are all books that I adored at the time I read them. A lot of these, as you might expect, are kids or YA books because I read them when I was younger, but not all of them. So the first one on this list is The King of Shadows by Susan Cooper. This book has a very warm place in my heart because I was sent this book the summer before I started at my senior school, which is a school that I absolutely loved. I went to boarding school from the age of 11. My best friends in the world are from there. I had a wonderful, wonderful 7 years there. So I've got very special memories of this school. And I was so excited about going. And the summer before I went, they sent all of the girls who were coming into the first year a copy of King of Shadows because that was going to be our set English text that first year. So I read it over that summer, and therefore it always has this connection to me of being so excited. Reading this book, loving it, being excited about starting this new school and talking about the book. Nerd! The book is basically about a young boy who ends up getting sent back in time and starring in one of Shakespeare's plays. He's actually directed by Shakespeare, I believe. It's been a long time since I read this. So maybe that's what kickstarted my love of time travel books. There's a fun kind of reveal at the end of why this happened. So yeah, I just loved it. I read it several times just that summer while I was waiting. And funnily enough, I have never really had an interest in rereading it since I got older, but Lena Norms did just recently do a video where she talked about this book and said it was a book that she still loves. So maybe I should reassess and I should give it another go, but I don't really gravitate much towards reading YA and middle grade books at this age anymore. That is not making any kind of statement on them. I totally understand why people love them. I just personally don't often love those stories anymore. So yeah, I don't really have any desire to pick it up just because I don't think I will connect to it as much as I once did. But if you do like reading middle grade books, I do remember it being fantastic. Then there's The Wanderer by Sharon Creech. This was also one that we studied in English, I think, in that first year at my boarding school. And I have no interest in rereading this now. The story doesn't interest me at all, and to be honest, I'm not sure it ever did. I don't really remember what they're doing. I think they're just living on a boat. It's like a family living on a boat. They go on a voyage. She learns some things about herself. The main character is called Sophie, which I remember because the reason I loved this book is because the book taught me the phonetic alphabet. So all of the characters learn their names in the radio alphabet. So she's Sierra Oscar, Papa, Hotel, India, Echo, and they call each other nicknames of the abbreviated versions. So she's Sierra Oscar through the whole book, and we all learn our names in the alphabet. So I'm Echo, Mike, Alpha. And that's basically the entire reason I remember loving that book, because I loved learning that alphabet so much, and I loved any time she wrote in the ship log, using that alphabet. Book itself, plot itself, don't remember, not interested in. Then I've got There's a Boy in the Girls' Bathroom by Louis Sachar. You want to hear something funny? I just googled the plot of There's a Boy in the Girls' Bathroom, and it is not the book I was thinking of at all. Turns out the book I was thinking of is called Dogs Don't Tell Jokes, but still by the same author, who is the author of Holes. Holes is actually a book that I am interested in rereading, even though it is a YA book. I think it's YA rather than middle grade. I can't quite remember the age range. But that is a book I am interested in rereading because I just remember loving it so much and it being so bizarre, and I want to know what that plot was and all of the twists that happen. So anyway, I will reread Holes. A book that I loved that I have no interest in rereading is There's a Boy in the Girls' Bathroom. I do remember thinking it was the funniest thing in the world. It's about a boy at school who wants to be a stand-up comedian, and the book is the story of him like developing his stand-up routine. And I remember even at the time not being entirely sure why all the jokes were funny, but I was just young enough to find it hilarious. Like, I think it's quite simple humour. I do really remember like one of the finale jokes that he tells that like gets him so much praise is he literally tells a joke where the punchline doesn't make any sense, and he's like, that's what's so funny, and it works, and like everyone in the school laughs. And I feel like if I read that now, I'd be like, that's not good enough for me. You have to tell a real joke. This is why we've had enough of straight white comedians. Was he straight? I can't remember. I'm sorry if he wasn't straight. Anyway, the point is, I think it was very, very funny as a kid, but I'm not sure how funny I would find it now. Then there's Looking for JJ by Anne Cassidy, and this one was a kind of reluctant entry on this list because for a long time I have been wanting to reread this book. It's a book about a girl who I think killed someone, and she's now living in like witness protection. She has a new identity to hide the fact that she is actually this like child murderer. So like, that sounds amazing. I want to reread it, but the reason I put it on this list is because the more I thought about it, I love thrillers. I read a lot of thrillers. I've read even quite a lot of witness protection stories. I'm not sure that this particular YA thriller from like fuck knows what year it was written is going to be that groundbreaking to me, Emma Alton, in the year of our Lord 2021. Maybe I'm wrong, you know? A teenager who was convicted of murder, that sounds so interesting. And it did win prizes. Is this video just going to be me talking myself into rereading shitty books I loved as a kid? Oh my god, she lives in Croydon? I have to reread it. Okay, literally, I have massively changed my tune. I'm going to reread this book. She's a 16-year-old waitress who lives in Croydon, that's where I live, and no one knows her secret, which is that she killed someone when she was 10 years old. Oh my god. Let's move on quickly because otherwise I will reread this book. The next book I've got is Doll by Nicky, and this is one that I definitely loved as a teenager, I think because it was like melodramatic as hell, and I loved that. It was about a very troubled child, and basically throughout my whole teenage years, this is what comes of being just like very privileged and having a nice life, is that you want to be troubled. I remember like being obsessed with the OC, and I wanted to be Marissa, and I wanted to be this like sad, messed up girl, and it was like, oh my god, you ungrateful little bitch. You have a nice stable family, you have parents who love you, you have friends, you go to a good school, no one is died, your mum isn't fucking your boyfriend, why do you want to have so many issues? Oh my god, I get mad at my teenage self all the time. Anyway, that little teenage drama queen that I was loved this book, Doll by Nicky, and purely because I loved it so much is really the reason that I don't want to reread it. I do remember one big reason why I liked it though is it does have this big twist, this big like plot twist, and I read lots of books with plot twists now, but maybe I didn't read quite so many at that age, and so I found it like absolutely groundbreaking that there's this big reveal and you find out that you've been like lied to as the reader. I remember loving that. Okay, then I've got The Philosophy Files by Stephen Law, and oh my god, I loved this book. I thought, when I was a kid, I thought I wanted to like study philosophy and be a philosopher, which lol, because I don't. It makes my head hurt. But I had this book called The Philosophy Files, which was basically like a kid's kind of entry guide into some big philosophical concepts, and like encouraging you to think outside the box a little bit. And I loved it, but it also gave me serious nightmares. So I really remember like the first chapter was all about the fact that we can't prove that we're not just like brains tied to a machine. Kind of like that we're not in the Matrix. We can't prove that. And it freaked me out so much that I like couldn't sleep. I didn't necessarily mind the fact that my life might be virtual reality, because I remember like talking to my parents about this, being so freaked out. My mom was like, it's fine, like, okay, if your life's virtual reality, it feels real to you, so that's good enough. But it didn't reassure me because I was convinced that I used to be real and had been stolen, and my brain had then been put in a vat. And so for me, it was fine, I didn't know any different, but that my real parents, who were like clones of the parents I had in the virtual reality, that they would be really sad, and I was worried about them. So I don't want to reread that book because I'll get worried again. I also just don't want to reread it because I think I'd probably find it a little bit annoying now. I think it was full of all of those questions like, how do you know that your purple is the same as someone else's purple? Which is cool, and I still would like recommend this book to kids, and like I think it was awesome, but like I don't need to read that now. I know maybe my purple is different from your purple. What are we gonna do? This is why I drink. Oh my god, the next one's on here. I cannot tell you how much I loved these books. And that was the Sabrina the Teenage Witch books. They were written by, I don't know who. Each one was written by like a different author. They were inspired by the TV show. It wasn't like the Sabrina graphic novels. These were Nickelodeon Sabrina the Teenage Witch inspired books that were probably so bad. I can't remember any of the stories. I remember that one of them was called Witchopoly, and it was like about a game. And she like had to go to different planets or something. The game was like she had to hop between different planets, and they were like the spaces on the Monopoly board. Why do I really want to read this again? I literally started the sentence with like absolutely no intention of ever touching any of those god-awful books again. And now I'm like, I should do a 24-hour readathon and read them all. Why am I like this? Why am I like this? I think they were all written by men as well. Why were they writing about a teenage girl? Does anyone else read these books? Has anyone read them recently? Like, should I do a readathon? Tell me that I shouldn't do a readathon. The next book I have on this list, I do actually remember being really, really lovely, and that was Life on the Refrigerated Door by Alice Kuipers. So this was a story about a mother and a daughter, all told through notes that they left each other on the fridge door when they like missed each other. And so it was very sweet, but it was a really sad story because we learned throughout it that the mother gets cancer. So it's a very crushing story, and the reason that I don't want to reread it now is I just think it would make me cry too much. I think like as a teenager I quite liked reading those kind of deliberately very sad stories that can be a bit emotionally manipulative maybe. I'm not saying this one was, because I haven't reread it and I don't know how sensitively it's done, but yeah, it's something that did appeal to me as a teenager, and now I think that might just be too upsetting to read. But I do remember absolutely loving it. I read it multiple times as a teenager. And I think it was also probably one of the first books that I read that played with format like that, telling the story all through letters. But it wasn't even through letters. I think I'd read books told through letters before, but the really unique format of being through notes on the fridge door. So it all had to make sense. It all had to be why they had missed each other in that situation, and kind of filling in the gaps of, obviously they're having lots of conversations in person that we never get to see. We have to figure it all out through the notes that they leave each other whenever one of them is out of the house. It was rather lovely. I do remember it being rather lovely. I read it multiple times. I probably will not reread it now because it will make me cry. And then moving for the last few to books for grown-ups, a book that I absolutely loved, or an author that I absolutely loved, was Jodi Picoult, and I read basically everything she's ever written. And I have read one of her more recent books, which was called A Spark of Light or something. I've read the one that was about a shooting at an abortion clinic that she wrote in the last few years, and I did think it was brilliant. So I do still think that she's a good author. I just don't have any interest anymore in going back and revisiting those first books that she became so famous for, which were all built around court cases. And I was obsessed with them. I wanted to be a lawyer, so I moved from wanting to be a philosopher to wanting to be a lawyer, which it turns out I had no interest in. I just liked reading about court cases. But the book in particular, I think the first book of hers that I read and loved, was called The Pact, which was about these two teenagers who had made a pact, I think, to kill themselves together? Is that what it is? I have it here. Yes, I have it here. It's about these two next door neighbours, these teenagers. The families have lived next door to each other for 18 years. They've been best friends, and the two teenagers fall in love. But one night, the families get a call from the hospital. The two kids are in hospital. The girl is dead from a gunshot wound. She seems to have been shot by the boy as part of a suicide pact that they had together. And he tells the police that he was supposed to shoot himself next. But a local detective has her doubts about the whole story. And I can't remember the twist of this. And fucking hell, I'm gonna have to reread it. This is the worst concept for a video because every single book that I had no interest in rereading, I think about it and suddenly I want to know what happens all over again. And I remember loving this book. And like my whole family read it at the time and we all loved it. So it's not like it's for teenagers. It's an adult book that my parents enjoyed. Richard and Judy liked it. I should reread this. Okay, the next one I know I don't want to reread. The next book is called A Special Relationship by Douglas Kennedy. And the reason I know I don't want to reread it is because I have tried to reread it twice. And I've DNF'd it both times. But the first time that I read it, I loved it. I don't know why, because I don't know why it would appeal to me as a teenager. I read it quite young, and it's a very adult book. Interestingly, it is a book written by a man called Douglas Kennedy about a woman. It's from the perspective of a woman who loses custody of her child. So this woman suffers from postnatal depression, and while she is in a very bad emotional state, she says something, I think, to her husband or her ex-husband. She says something about threatening to kill the baby, which she instantly takes back and instantly regrets, but he then uses this against her to win custody of their child. And so the book is about this custody battle between them, and I remember being so invested, even as like a teenage kid who didn't have children and like could not imagine what that would be like. I was so invested. And I remember my mum actually read it first and she recommended it to me, and we were both amazed at how well we thought the female main character was written, considering that she was written by a man. We thought she was very believable. My mum's opinion matters a lot more in this one because my mum is somebody who actually is a mother, and she thought this was a good portrayal of a mother and all of her emotions. So I think it was amazing. I don't know why I've never been able to get into it since, but I have tried twice more in the years following that, and just like put it down both times because I just didn't care the next time round, and I don't know why. So like I'd actually be very interested if any of you have read it, or if you guys like want to read it now and then tell me what you think. Is it as good as I remember? Why do you think I DNF'd it the next few times? I need some answers. And finally, the last book I have on this list is Veronica Decides to Die by Paulo Coelho. So this is a short book that I absolutely loved when I read it as like a 17-year-old. But when I think about the plot of it now, it makes me very uncomfortable. So this was about a young woman who attempts to take her own life, but she wakes up in a hospital and she's told by the doctor that she survived the suicide attempt, but that she suffered very severe physical damage. I can't remember exactly what the doctor says has happened, but that she will now die, and that she just has a few more days or weeks left to live, but that she is dying. It's a very short book, it's a novella I think, and we follow what happens to this woman living what she knows to be her last days on earth, and actually falling in love with life, like relearning her passion for life, which now just makes me very uncomfortable. And there's also like questions in the book of ethics with the things that the doctor is doing. Like he has these great intentions, but I'm like no longer sure about it. I remember thinking it was like lovely and very affirming and empowering, but I just don't particularly have any desire to reread it now because I think it sounds a little bit strange and exploitative. But I did find it very meaningful at the time. It did affect me in a very positive way at the time. So there you go. There's a list of books that in theory I never want to reread, but actually it turns out I want to reread at least half of them. So please try and talk me out of that one because I've got enough to read. Thank you very much. And here is my end screen.